How's it going, everyone? I'm Ottengroth, and today I'm doing something a little bit different on the Untrained Ear than we normally do. We are at the midpoint of the year, so it's time for me to do a mid-year album of the year predictions video. This video, I'm going to list my top 10 albums of the year so far. I'm doing this randomized in no particular order, so you're not going to be able to derive who the front runners are from this list. There are going to be what I predict to be some surprises on this list, some albums that I'm sure those of you who have been following this series from the inception will have guessed would be on here. So buckle in and let's get into this thing. So the first album I'm going to get into is Pirouette by Model ACTRIZ, to the surprise of nobody. This is the second album by Model ACTRIZ, and this had glimpses of the previous record in terms of there still being a lean into the spoken word style with heavy house, synth, glam rock, vibrations. Lyrically, this album I felt was lethally naked and intimate. It really played into the glam rock, runway pop aesthetic. Look, Cole Hayden is iconic as a frontman, and I think that the vocals really took a step forward on this album with the move from spoken verse into more of a melodic sound. I think in general, there was a clear maturation for Model ACTRIZ on this project, and that cannot be underplayed at all. I think in terms of other music that was released so far this year, this project Pirouette is a clear standout and not to be underplayed, and I don't think many people are underplaying it. I would imagine you're going to see this on a lot of lists. So yeah, Pirouette, definitely. So I'm going to go right from that into an album that none of you are expecting because I didn't do a video on it, which is Evangelic Girl is a Gun by YEULE. This is the fourth studio album from Singaporean singer, songwriter, and producer Nat Chimiel, aka YEULE. This album is a glitch pop, hyper pop, post pop, shoegaze type project. Thematically, this album for YEULE is one where she's talking about kind of the myriad of identities that comprise who she has become. And this is attested through the blend of genre influences and sounds that are mixed into the production across the 10 tracks that comprise the album. Overall, this album boasts a very powerful production aesthetic that can go from, in one track, a post punk grunge piece to an electro club dance banger in the next. And all of this sounds completely natural, and it's all tied together through the fingers of shoegaze and hyperpop. And it's just masterfully woven all the way through. I cannot give this album enough accolades. I am so remorseful that I didn't get to do a video on this album, but at the time when it came out, I was pretty busy and I just didn't end up getting around to it in a timely manner. It is a huge regret of mine because I'm in love with this album. I've listened to it a ton. I did do a music board review that is more in depth than what I'm normally doing on there, so please check that out. I have a link to it on my Twitter. So for the more in-depth review, please take a look on that. But the TLDR is the baseless rating for this album is the torrential 10. So the next album I'm going to talk on is Lethal by RICO Nasty. This was her third studio album, and in a lot of ways, this album really embraces some of the truest spirit of the foundation of the hyperpop genre. And in this, what I mean is that it takes the essence of what makes a genre, the baseline of it, and it cranks that up to 11 and then hyperfixates on it. And this album touts a plethora of genre influences, including but not limited to hip hop, rap, pop, hyper pop, glitch pop, punk rock, and even metalcore. Uh, this is probably the most mature album to come from RICO to date. In truth, I thought that it was nearly perfect and all of my essence really wanted to give this project a 10, but I was shoehorned out of it thanks to basically one track. If you saw the video, you know what I'm talking about. I think through and through, this was truly an ambitious and artistic project. I was very impressed with it. Up next is Birthing by SWANS. This was the 17th studio album from the experimental rock group SWANS. This was extremely long winded. It was about a 2 hour runtime, and that was across 7 tracks. Each track was multi-phased and presenting itself as a journey with a sonic progression and development across its entire runtime. I gushed for a while about Michael Gear's vocals. I compare them to Isaac Wood, the former lead singer of Black Country New Road. I think there's a lot of similarities between them in terms of their dynamic vocal styles. There have been some mixed opinions about this album, especially as it's had a couple weeks to sit and stew within the critical music community. But my opinion on it kind of remains stalwart insofar as I think that this album is immensely powerful and stands apart from virtually anything else I've heard so far this year. I think sonically, this album is in a different league than a lot of its peers this year, and that's what this list is all about. So I'm not going to pivot my opinion on that. I think of all the bands that I've learned about on my journey into rediscovering music these past few years, Swans is easily the one that I'm most excited about diving into. And that's not just a result of listening to this album, but also a result of kind of experiencing the dialogues that I've witnessed between the dedicated fans, not just within the critical music community, but also on the outside of it. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about this band and everything that they've done. Up next, I'm going to talk on Boys These Days by Sports Team. This was the third studio album from UK alt rock band Sports Team. This album is chock full of very strong hooks in the choruses and very creative and lush instrumental mixes. Alex Rice, the lead vocalist, has a very cool kind of surfer aesthetic to this vocal package that he contributes to the songs. He reminds me of like a softer Sebastian Murphy in a way. From production to instrumentation to vocals, I think this album really was the full package. And I think not enough attention is paid to just how lush the album is instrumentally. It features a really diverse instrumental package that's particularly off meta for an alt rock band. Some of the sample instruments that are there frequently in tracks include the saxophone, the accordion, the harmonica, just to name a few. And these aren't like a one and done thing. They're frequently included in these tracks. And I think that's a really interesting touch that was done. I think this album is super dancey, it's super professional, and just super consistent all the way through. I think overall, this was just definitely a sleeper release that deserved a ton more love and attention than I have seen in the circles online. So it's definitely making my list, at least. Up next is an album that needs no introduction. It is the Viagra Boys self-titled release, their fourth studio album. It's punk rock in its purest form, grunge incarnate with lyrics focusing on societal disillusionment, drug use, parasociality, health, and the pursuit of enlightenment through any means necessary. The instrumentation is noisy but lush on this thing, and of course, Sebastian Murphy is the Sebastian Murphy of our time, as encapsulated by the music video for Bog Body. But in all seriousness, I think that this album is definitely going to go down as one of the greats. It's not going to be forgotten from this year. And while I think there's some weight to the discussion for whether or not it can really box in the same ring as Cave World, I think it's definitely a heavyweight contender in terms of albums that have released this year. And I think that it is certainly an album that is worth accolade. I still listen to it now. It's a great project. So I stand by this nomination. Up next, another album that probably nobody was looking for is Eusexua by FKA Twigs. This is an album that predates this series, but not my attention. Eusexua was released in January of this year and was the first major project that blessed my ears in 2025. Despite the myriad of albums that have released and that I have listened to this point, this album has continued to remain in my top 10 mix, and with very good reason. The production is nothing short of sensational. The sound of this album is, in my opinion, genre defining for the new wave of house music moving forward. I think that FKA Twigs knows how to hold a sound and linger on it in the most addicting way. I think she cultivates the tension and releases it in these just focused blasts of sonic dopamine. I think the most impressive thing is that there are these like moments of quiet on some of the tracks where even in these like light flicks of voice, she kind of urges the listener to lean in and listen. And the payoff, you just know it's going to zing like nothing you've felt before. To sum it up, this album is entrancing, it's addicting, and it's exhilarating. It's different. Up next, I want to talk about Magic Alive by McKinley Dixon. This was the fifth studio album from American rapper and singer McKinley Dixon. The production on this album is masterful, and the instrumentation is immensely diverse, especially for a rap album. The saxophone player, who I learned since releasing my video, his name is Etienne Stoufflet, aka Teeny. He is just such an enhancement to this project, and every track he's featured on is better for having him on it, and that is a great many tracks. But in addition to Etienne, I think McKinley's ability to inflect is as good as, if not better, than some of the best in the industry. And this superpower of his allows him so much flexibility on this album in terms of subgenres of rap from track to track. I think there are sincerely no misses on this album. And it wound up being dropped in what ended up being the perfect moment, as it dropped the same time as the Carter 6. So talk about a tale of two albums. I think that will go down as a very lucky thing. But luck certainly wasn't needed, as this album, standing on its own, could have been dropped alongside virtually anything else rap wise, and would have been a scary thing to drop alongside of. As McKinley Dixon is, if his name isn't a contender up there at this point, that would shock me, because this project was something else in terms of rap projects that I've released this year. I can think of very few that are in the same ring. Up next, I'm going to talk about Revenge Seekers from Jane Remover. This is another album that predates the existence of this series by exactly 1 week. As someone whose second life in music was rebirthed much in thanks to the hyperpop genre, this album admittedly holds a special place in my heart, as it is in a lot of ways an homage to the hyperpop genre. Jane, I think, manages to bring balance to chaos with a true flex of her musical capabilities on this project, as she uses samples from all over the internet to cultivate what ends up being a very catchy and well-produced glitch pop vibe. This is sure to be a very polarizing project within what is already a very polarizing genre, but I'll be bold enough to say that I think very few critics are going to be able to attack it with much sincerity, because it's pretty clear just how well Jane's vision was executed across the entirety of this project. I think, in my opinion, what was accomplished from a production standpoint is artistic genius on its own. And that's aside from the fact that Jane had already dropped this year under the Venturing alias with an album that is noteworthy in its own regard. But this list isn't about outside accolades, and this album can absolutely hold its own, as it stands out as a proper contender with addictive beats, cohesive vision, lyrical depth, and artistic production that quite simply runs laps around 99% of its peers. No matter how you slice it, this thing is impressive. The last project I will talk on for this list, incapable of escaping it, is Forever How Long by Black Country New Road. This album was a tonal shift as the band moved from Isaac Wood to Tyler Hyde, May Kershaw, and Georgia Ellery as the trio of vocalists for this project. This album is a masterclass of orchestrational excellence, simply put. And all three vocalists are dynamic, I believe, in their own rights. Of course, there's a lot of conversation around Tyler Hyde and her distinction compared to the other two, but I believe every single one of the three has merit. And I purely enjoy the project with all three. So even if it continues as a trio, I think that it will continue to improve and do better. This album overall is more uplifting and accessible than previous records. And I think it was a testament through and through to a successful changing of the guard. And it was also a signal of some ideas that can be built off of in the future, while also continuing to stand apart from the field when it comes to cohesion and tone. Something that Black Country New Road has always been an example of when compared to other bands, and they continue to be, while also surviving such a savage blow as the loss of one Isaac Wood, which is a blow that would cripple or destroy most other bands. The fact that they were able to survive this is noteworthy and exceptional in and of itself. This dynamic album, I also predict, is going to be one that is remembered long past many of its peers this year. I am still listening to it months since its release at this point with high frequency, which is a very good indicator for its longevity. The tracks are aging like fine wine. I predict that they will continue to do so, as no matter how you slice it with this one, I think that it is a professional project through and through, and all of the love and labor that went into this project is so obvious. The passion is so clear. Everything is still there with this band, and I think they will continue to build on this. But even the future withstanding what they put together with Forever How Long is noteworthy and exceptional. So that wraps up the mid-year album of the year predictions. This list may look quite different by the end of the year. We're going to see what happens. But until then, I'm Ottengroff, and this has been The Untrained Ear.